Good morning. Welcome to another morning devotional talk to get you started on your day. Or if you're watching this in the afternoon or evening, to just help you with whatever comes next. I'm Mac Frazier. I'm the pastor at Washington New Church. And let's begin by clearing our minds, inviting the Lord into this space by saying the Lord's Prayer together. So please join me. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So, what to talk about today? I want to look at the question, where is God? And this is a question that I know I want to ask when I'm experiencing real trouble in my life. When it feels like the things that I've worked hard for and that I've been faithful in, and the good stuff that's going on in my life gets derailed. And whether it's because of a dumb decision on my part or something outside of my control, things start to unravel. I will start to wonder, well, where's God in this? Wasn't he happy with me doing what I was supposed to be doing? How could he let me get into this situation? And in particular, there are times in my life when I feel like I'm aware of the presence of the Lord, and there are other times when I really feel like I'm all by myself. And it's those latter times that I especially want to know, well, where is he? Well, what's got me thinking about this today is not that that's what I'm feeling right now, happily, but preparing for Easter Sunday, which was yesterday, I read a lot of different accounts of the Easter story, and once again was struck by a pattern. And I think probably the best way to talk about this pattern is first give you an example. So I'm going to read to you from the Gospel of John, chapter 21. This is the first half of the last chapter of that Gospel. And this takes place after the Lord's life had been concluded, after his crucifixion, after his resurrection, and in fact, after he'd had a couple of appearances as the risen Lord. And this is the last one described in the Gospel of John. So here's how it goes, starting at verse 1 of chapter 21. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." And they said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" And they answered him, "No." And this would have been a shouted conversation because there's a bit of a distance here. "So do you have any fish?" "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." And so they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved, this is how John refers to himself in his gospel. He never uses his own name. That disciple whom Jesus loved, therefore said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. The others came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off. Actually says about 200 cubits off, but that's about 100 yards. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, with fish laid out on it and bread. And Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now, none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus was revealed to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Now, when they're out on the boat and they're 200 cubits away, 100 yards, it's early morning. The sun's just come up. Maybe there's fog on the water. And the Lord on the shore calling to them, it's reasonable that they wouldn't know who he was. If that's all that's going on here, though, I have to wonder what's up at the very end there, where it said they didn't dare ask, "Who are you?" Why would that even be a question if they're sitting there on the beach, they're eating breakfast with him, they're looking right at him? This is a person that they had spent 3 years of their lives with. They knew what this guy looked like. So why would the question even come about? Who are you? Was it because they'd seen him die and they didn't expect to see him? It's like one of those situations, like I know for myself, when I'm in like the grocery store, I'm very often sort of kind of in my own head. I'll wear earbuds and I can walk right by somebody I know in the grocery store because I don't expect to see them there. You know, somebody from church, somebody from work, and I might not notice them right away because that's not the context I expect to see them in. But the thing is, if I once do see, oh, that's Eric from church, I'm not going to have trouble recognizing him. I'll stop. I'll say hi. And, you know, I'll know that's Eric. There's not going to be a doubt in my mind. And yet here the disciples apparently have some doubt because it says none of them dared to ask. It means the question was on their mind. Now, I said this was a pattern. In fact, this happens over and over again in the stories of the Lord meeting people after he was raised from the dead. Yesterday was Easter Sunday, and for worship with my congregation, I gave a talk on Mary Magdalene weeping at the Lord's tomb. And the story there is she was at the tomb. It was the low point of her life, very possibly. Jesus is dead. The movement that she was an early part of seems to be dispersed and broken and gone. And now she's come to the tomb to pay her respects, and the body's gone. And in her mind, she assumes, well, somebody took the body away. So now she can't even mourn properly. And she turns around, and there behind her is the Lord, the person she's looking for. But she doesn't recognize him. She thinks he's the caretaker for the park that this tomb is in. And she asks him, "Please tell me where you put the body." And then he says her name. Jesus says, "Mary." And suddenly, something in his voice or something happens, and she recognizes him. Now, again, you could speculate. Her eyes were full of tears. She was distraught. Maybe she was looking at the ground. Maybe he was standing off at some distance. I don't think that's what's going on. Here's another example. In a talk given just a few days ago by Bishop Peter Buss on this channel, he talked about the story of the Lord traveling on the road to Emmaus with two of his followers. And there he spent an entire day journeying in deep conversation with these two people, and they had no idea who he was until at the end of the day when they sat down to break bread, and suddenly they recognized him. This is a recurring pattern. But wait, it's not just an Easter pattern. the theme of people seeing God but not recognizing him actually shows up all over the place once you start to look for it. So, in a story earlier in the Gospels that kind of echoes the one that we read this morning, there's a scene described where the Lord is up on a hillside by himself. He's getting some quiet time, some alone time. He's in prayer. And meanwhile, his followers are out at sea on a boat. Again, boat, Lord's on the shore. And a storm picks up, and the disciples are fearful for their lives. And in the midst of the storm, as the ship's tossing and turning, they look out and they see this ghostly figure walking across the surface of the stormy waves headed towards the boat. And at first, they're terrified. And then it's the Lord. And he speaks to them, standing out there on the water, and they recognize him. And in fact, just as Peter threw himself in the water in the story we read today, Peter walks out on the water for a moment and then loses confidence and loses faith and sinks into the water. And the Lord hauls him back up. The Old Testament, there are stories there illustrating that God is often there but not recognized. It's an indirect version of this, but there's the story where there's an evil king who's out to hunt down and capture a prophet, and he surrounds the town where that prophet's staying. And in the morning, the prophet's servant gets up and realizes we're surrounded, we're in serious trouble, and he's ready to panic. But his master prays to God and asks that his eyes be opened so that he can see, as he says, those who are with us are more than those who are against us. And the servant has his eyes open and he sees spiritually around him the army of God protecting them, chariots of fire surrounding them. And they had always been there. He just didn't see them. Or think about the story of Jacob way back early in Genesis. And he's fleeing from the land he grew up in. And he's on a journey. And he comes to a rest at the end of a day's travel. And just some random place as far as he's concerned. Lays down to sleep. Rests his head up on a rock. Goes to sleep. Has a dream. And in this dream, he sees God and he speaks with God. He has a dialogue with the Creator. And he sees a bunch of other things as well. When he wakes up, what he says there is, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. So this is a common theme in the Word, that the Lord is there, but people don't recognize him. Why? What's going on there? Well, if you think about it, isn't this a common theme in our lives? Isn't it true that in retrospect, we can see how the Lord was working in our lives at times when, in the moment, it felt like we were all alone and we were without help or support? I know that's true for my life. Let me read to you. This is part of a large reading that I offered my congregation yesterday. And I just want to give you the sort of the golden nugget in the middle. This is, I think, a really powerful idea. It says this is from the book True Christian Religion, number 126. During our spiritual tests, we are apparently left completely alone. Although in fact, we are not alone. At those times, God is most intimately present at our deepest level, giving us support. So it's not just that even when we feel alone and we're in temptation, God's there, but especially during those times, he's present on the deepest level, working for us and with us. So why don't we see him? Why do we have these times of temptation when he's actually as close as he can be, and it feels like he's not there at all? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with freedom. It's sort of a trite example, but imagine a parent helping a child to learn to ride a bicycle. And a typical part of the process is running along with the child, holding the bike up for them, sort of being the one doing the balancing before they figure out how to get going and balance on their own. And at some point, the parent lets go. So this is sort of the reverse. Here, the child ends up pedaling, not realizing that they're the ones keeping the bike up until they turn around, look behind, and realize Dad's way back there. But that realization is really important. When the child realizes, hey, I did that on my own, that locks in what they've learned. Well, in more serious matters, it's important to have it really locked in from the start. And so whenever we go into spiritual battle, whenever our higher self and our lower self really lock horns, and we have a fight within ourselves about what kind of person we're going to be, the Lord backs off in terms of how we feel his presence, so that it really feels like we're entering that arena all by ourselves, because we need to feel like we're making these decisions on our own. Even though, like a concerned parent, he's right there ready to catch us, and he's cheering us on, and he's working at the deepest level so that the things that we do and the things that we feel like we're the ones that are accomplishing it, it's really his power working through us. Again, it's the opposite of that bike example. It's almost like we teach ourselves to ride a bike, and then after a while discover all this time it's the Lord that holds the bike up, not us. And that's kind of what's going on in our spiritual lives. But it can be hard to go through struggles feeling like he's not there. Now, we're told in his word, there are, like pointed out, there are all these hints that he's present even when it doesn't feel like he is. And so I think we're encouraged, once we enter into a fight, into a spiritual battle, feeling like we're doing this on our own, to then look for him, to try to find him. And the Lord promises that nothing bad happens that he doesn't also bring something good into. And he's not the one who's behind what's bad, but he never allows anything to be bad without him being in it. And that's an important distinction. He doesn't cause us to suffer. He doesn't cause temptation. But he will never abandon us when we're in those states. And so when you're struggling, you can look for that. You can try to find, well, where is the good here? Where is the comfort? Where is the thing that's not bad? And recognize that you're seeing the Lord there. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes that's really, really hard to do. I acknowledge that. I know for myself, there have been times when I just, I couldn't see the good, or the good that I could see was so small compared to the pain that I was experiencing, that it didn't really satisfy. It didn't make it feel like the Lord was there with me. And in those cases, what does work is for me to just trust that the Lord is there. And part of what I'm doing is I'm trusting my own past experiences. Even if it doesn't feel like God is present in my life, I remember times when he very clearly was, when I could feel that presence. And then it becomes a disagreement between my present consciousness and my memory of my past consciousness. And who's to say one's right and the other's wrong? So I might as well trust the one that gives comfort. And every time I do that, every time I just assume that the Lord's there, even if I can't feel him there, even if it feels like I'm completely alone, when I go in trusting that that is so, in the end, I've always come out the other side seeing, yep, there he was. So I'm hoping that you're not going through one of those states right now. But if you are, I want you to know the Lord is right there. He's right behind you. Or maybe he's even right in front of you in a form that you can't see. And he's going to get you through this. And when he does, you'll be transformed into a better person, a more loving person, more spiritual person, because that's his ultimate goal, is to step in and make us all angels. Let's finish with a moment of silent prayer. Lord, please hear the silent prayers of all of our hearts. In your name, Lord, we pray. Amen. I hope this was useful for you today. If it was, consider subscribing to this channel so that you don't miss any other videos like this. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.